In this video, I'll discuss the chain of custody form. Chain of custody preserves the integrity of evidence. It provides rules and procedures that are to be followed to ensure that we can trust the integrity of evidence. It also deals with the evidence gathering in terms of how it was gathered. Evidence storage. Where is it stored? Where was it moved to? By whom? What were the dates and times? And also evidence access. Who had access to it? Was it signed out? Was it transferred between locations? And so on. This can affect the admissibility in a court of law. Now, of course, laws will vary from region to region around the world, but the general concept of chain of custody remains the same. With evidence gathering, we have to think about first responders. They should always be working only from a copy of digital data. Now, this can be done by taking an image or cloning things like hard disks and storage media instead of working on the original. Working on the original is always a no-no. Write blocking can also be used to prevent changes to data. Write blocking usually comes in the form of software these days where, for instance, before we image a hard disk to be used for evidence, we would install write blocking software to ensure that no changes would be made in that case to that specific device. So examples of gathering evidence would include issues such as immediately turning off a suspect mobile phone and removing batteries when it's seized. Now, we would do this to ensure that it can't receive signals from elsewhere to destroy evidence or anything like that. Faraday bags are used essentially as shielding into which we can place communicating devices so that they will no longer be able to communicate wirelessly. In some cases, it might be required that we take photographs of equipment or computer screens in terms of the state they were discovered in. Also, we can't forget other devices like scanners and printers. They could have document history in their logs that could be relevant in terms of evidence. And of course, security camera footage can also be very useful. The storage of evidence has to be accounted for. Now, we should be storing certain items that are susceptible to electronic static discharge or ESD in anti-static bags. Labeling is also crucial in terms of storing evidence, and especially if it's going to be stored for the long term and perhaps called up in the future. A Faraday bag, once again, can be used to store evidence. We also must log any movement of that evidence between different storage locations down to the minute in terms of tracking date and time. We should also make sure that we keep evidence away from magnetic fields. Some evidence, such as that on a traditional hard disk drive, is susceptible to being wiped or data being damaged or destroyed from strong magnetic fields. Climate-controlled storage rooms are normally used to store evidence. We should also consider the fact that some items, for example, a laptop that might have been seized during an investigation, has internal batteries, such as a CMOS battery, that is used to store the date and time. But it does run out eventually. So whether it be 5 years or 10 years or 12 years, that will eventually no longer supply power to things to keep track of date and time on that local machine. So we have to keep that in mind as well when it comes to some electronic equipment. On the screen, you'll see a sample of a chain of custody form, and it includes things such as a case number, if it's being used in legal proceedings, the offense type for seized equipment, the first responders identifying information, the suspects identifier information, date and time, the location the data was gathered or seized, and we might also have labeling information, and so on and so forth. Now, whenever this evidence is released or received, so if someone is taking it to use it and someone is putting it back into storage, all of this has to be logged with detailed comments. In this video, we discussed the chain of custody form.